Welcome to the capital projects meeting. I'll turn it over to Jackie Tepper from EPG.
So I did pass out, it's nothing specifically formal, but just an agenda with a few different project updates, so just really an open discussion. Kind of a status update where we're at with permits, and then the next action steps that we'll be working on. So the first item is the SRF, project evaluation form. So that's the first step to get SRF funding. That is due next Friday, July 26th. Yeah.
At noon, they don't even give us till 4.
It's a state thing, they're on the beat.
What's funny is you can apply, the SRF application can go till midnight, but the PEF has to be
Has to
in
be by
by
noon. Okay.
and they moved it up 3 weeks. So,
Right, yeah, it's usually August.
And measurements contained in that document?
So that would be, it's gonna be both the collection system and the plant. So it would be funding for everything, and what you pretty much do is, since we have the TWMP, that's the basis of our submission. And the point being, you basically ask for how much money you want to see what you get, and then eventually becomes on the project approval certificate. And then it would also be to rank your project to see if you get funding in the first place.
And that's the most important.
Hmm.
With the 0% interest, we'd have to be ranked.
Do they approve it based on a percentage of the cost, or do they approve it based upon the dollar value?
no,
Or on the
Yeah.
merits
by
of
your
the,
points.
Yeah.
That's how you compete against everybody else.
Okay.
and that's based what on need, sort of like potential.
Yeah,
perceived need.
it's neat, and then also as you, the DEP itself reviews them and then makes tweaks based on whether or not they want to give you extra oomph or less.
Hmm.
So it tends, like, big areas, big, like Taunton and,
Bang for the buck.
New Bedford, they like to do those, they look at environmental justice. They also, then the Cape projects are all usually ranked really high because of the MEP program. So because of that, those two things tend to be where all the projects fall out, and they'll fund as many as they possibly can on that list. So it doesn't matter if you're 449th and the cutoff is 500, as long as you're in that above the cutoff line, it doesn't matter where you rank. You just want to rank as high, you just want to get as many points as possible.
And is it, a dollar amount, a cap, a percentage? How does it work?
So they give you, for clean water, it's 50 million, but they'll fund your entire project. So they'll just spread the rest over other years. So if it was $150 million project, they'll give you somewhere up to 50 million the first year, and then they'll do a rollover and they'll just carry it into their subsequent SRF funding.
Like
Programs.
what happened on the water side was that I think they were going to initially give us $13 million a year. And then Fall River or New Bedford, one of the bigger dropped out.
Mm.
And so we got the first year, they moved that 26 million over to us. And so it was like this huge jump start, but I don't think that's gonna happen on the wastewater side unless someone doesn't get approval.
I was gonna say, isn't part of the SRF funding contingent on the number of projects competing at the same time?
Yeah,
I mean, if,
they only have
Yeah,
so
they only
many.
have so much money.
Right, which is the reason why, it's a little bit better to be ahead of the game in this case than behind, because if you're trying to go at the same time, the Yarmouth is already in the pool.
Dennis this year.
Dennis is going, Harwich is in the middle of it, so you got all the towns on the Cape that have to do the same stuff that we have to do. We're all ramping up to do billions of dollars worth of work in the next 10 years.
But once you get approved, they do honor you as a prior approved project. So it's sort of just getting in the queue.
So when you get into phase 2, you're in the same situation?
You have to reapply.
Every phase that you want, even if you decide to take phase 1 and split it into, you wanted to do this year, a smaller piece of, say, your collection system, and then do another collection system next year, you'd go for funding again. You can do multi-year, they used to let you do it, and then they didn't want you to do it, and so I know you guys probably did it for the water,
Oh, yeah.
I think it just depends, but, yeah, you just, whenever you're looking for those funding opportunities, you go through that process and apply.
And again, it's like 50 million, that's the maximum any one
That's,
project gets per year, kind of like? or-
unless something falls out and they decide to give,
give
when
you
you
more.
when you get listed on the intended use. So
Right.
Harwich, for example, we just did the project last year. We're going to construction now. Project was estimated at 50 million and change. The state came back and listed us for 48 or 49 and change, and then we freaked out saying, oh, what about the other, 2 million? And they said, no, don't worry, it just rolls over into the next year. So I think what they did is they looked at how much they had to partition through their whole fund, give you as much as they can for the various different projects, try to rank as many projects as possible, and then go. from
And then
there.
everyone has to go to their town meetings for funding, and some fail and some prevail, and then they
That
jockey it all.
determines where you're falling.
Yeah.
Are there, I've understood from the last couple of meetings, there are other sources of funding? And what are their timelines? Are there timelines?
All the other sources are lined up to the SRF calendar, so.
Oh, okay,
For instance, the Cape and Islands Water
Okay.
Protection Fund, if we're on the IUP.
okay,
So if the SRF puts us on their IUP, then we automatically qualify for
oh,
Cape
okay.
and Islands.
The only one I don't know, I haven't done a MassWorks in a while.
Yeah.
So MassWorks, I
That's
think,
usually like
is
August,
a weird.
but that we could do for construction for later, right? So we wouldn't have to have that to start the project, but we could
No.
use that. So grants, there might be some grants and other funding that we could use
For design.
for design or for later.
The state kind of regroups them in a separate fund. And
Okay.
So Jack, just to clarify, what we're submitting here is really for the design of the two pieces, right?
yes,
Yeah, except for the funding isn't for design, it's for construction.
Cause you have to think.
You
so
can't
far
get
ahead.
fund, SRF doesn't fund for design,
Oh.
so just to be clear.
We had to pay for that, just like water.
It was.
Remember water, we had to pay, we had to borrow 5 million to get started
Right.
on water, that's the same.
and then kind of what we mentioned for MassWorks or with water, we use USDA. So we would look for other funding sources
Yeah, right.
for anything non-construction. But this would be for construction, and we're redoing the costs that we're gonna submit. But just for scale on the TWMP, we had 161 million as like the midpoint, like mid-construction costs. In the total, so.
Yes, that's a big chunk.
Is this, are there federal funds for any of these kinds of things, or are we all within Massachusetts?
Well, that's what the SRF actually contains.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Okay, and again, just,
They take that funding money that they got from like infrastructure or whatever the bill
Okay,
was, and then
okay.
they shove it into a program that the state's already got developed. Cause
uh-huh,
it's easier to distribute,
okay,
so they fund it that way, but you don't necessarily have to meet all the federal requirements, but you have to meet most of them are the ones that DEP.
And a lot of towns
pushes
got
on.
ARPA funds throughout last year and the cycle before. They gave us a lot of extra money and loan forgiveness.
okay,
And then you'll get environmental justice as well. So because you're environmental justice, you, in addition to the others, you'll get some.
Funding for that.
It's basically like loan forgiveness or whatever,
Yeah.
debt forgiveness on the.
Give us, I'm sorry to interrupt, does that
No.
give us more points? Because we're an environmental, or does it take away points?
So it gives them-
Okay,
Gives you more.
So, yeah.
Yeah,
sorry. Was, Wellfleet wasn't environmental justice, was it?
No, it was a point of contention because Eastham was, but Wellfleet wasn't.
You know, but we are poorer, no doubt.
So if I may, I want to add like one thing here. So obviously this is a 2024. This could be subject to BABA requirement too, so that adds another element to the, the one cost and then obviously the hoop that we have to jump through. So this would be definitely subject to BABA requirements.
what's that again?
Build America, buy.
Oh.
By American.
Oh, that whole thing, oh
Yeah.
boy,
So there's already a component that all the projects had, which is American Iron and Steel, and now they just put it back to kind of what it was in 2009 on steroids a little bit for what it was for American, the ARRA funding, if you were familiar with any of that. So it's, it is definitely, it'll be less of an impact probably for the collection system. It is gonna be a pain in the butt for the treatment plant. Cause it covers like everything.
And it means delays, basically, right?
Well, what it means is that in part of the design, we have to spend a bit more time trying to find products that would actually meet the
Supply
requirements.
chain analysis becomes
And
an
then-
issue.
And then it becomes an issue of, whether or not they actually make that item in the United
In the
States.
Or a friendly geography or whatever.
So,
So, Jeff, I've heard we don't really have a, like an in-house cost estimator for vertical construction, so we usually sub that, some of that work out. But what we've heard, on recent discussions that, the BABA impact could be somewhere potentially between 5 to 15% of project cost. So I'm not really sure. What do you
Yeah.
guys? Yeah,
did you
so
say
that
50 or 15?
5 to 15%.
Oh,
Oh,
okay,
good.
good. I wrote the.
That's all right.
Can you identify certain pieces of equipment by direct versus, or do you have to go to the?
So okay. You still can't circumvent the process, but you can do that,
Gives you more opportunity. to
But
spend
it-
more time.
but it's more complicated than that. So it's got two layers of, one, you have to meet Massachusetts procurement law, so you have to procure it and go through all that kind of process. It still has to meet BABA requirements, and then you have to figure out how you're gonna get that, all those things that you buy to your contractor and the lines of responsibility of who's storing it, I mean, some of this equipment is not something you would want to be buying and trying to store because it's too big for any of this kind
Yeah,
of
okay.
stuff. So,
Stockpiling.
Well, actually, I've done it before quite a few times, and you buy the services from the contractor as far as receiving it and storing it and so on. But I'm just saying, contractors have a tendency not to spend a lot of time curing stuff like that, if it's not very competitive. You know, the industry, where you as the owner or our groups here may wish to spend more time in doing that. You
yeah,
know,
I guess
searching out more vendors and stuff like
it
that.
depends on what the product is,
Yeah.
because in wastewater, it's not like you're buying a car and there's
50 different.
thousands of different models and makes that you can pick from.
I understand that.
If you're buying an SBR, there's, 2 or 3, and it has a huge ramification on the design. So going through the procurement process, if you were to do that as part of design, that is not I hate to say it, is not in the way we built the cost of the project, because that's a whole nother, we might have to design like 3 different
I was
SBRs
gonna
to
say,
put them out
almost
on.
contingency,
Put
right?
them out on the street. If you were trying to do something of that big, if you were talking smaller pieces, Mass General Law still wants, 3 or equal. If you want to procure, you can put something out, but not everything is equal. It complicates things. I've done it. It can be done. It's just, the other issue becomes, the finger pointing that we've tried to, if the contractor's doing all of that under their own umbrella, it avoids the issue of it was broken when I got it kind of stuff. And now there's an extra cost to the town because the contractor's gonna pay more because they've already worked out their deal with their supply. They already have sort of the suppliers that they typically work with on these kinds of projects. Whereas if they're going to then go and have the one that the town bought, they're gonna arrange who's bringing it over, who's responsible for taking it off the truck, what happens if it drops off the truck, who owns the insurance on that? Who owns the warranty on the performance of said piece of equipment with regards to, because the person that's selling is just like, hey, I just sold it, I didn't install it, you installed it wrong. If we keep all that under the general contractor, at least the town is more protected in the sense that you have one person that you
For
have, to-
recourse.
you have, that you can fight with versus.
But then you'll have to fight with him when he tries to substitute something, and then you're fighting with him for 6 months.
Yeah.
So 6.5 doesn't matter.
Yeah,
I'm just throwing it out there. as an
yeah,
alternative,
it's,
so.
it's definitely an option. You,
Yeah.
you can do it, but it also then it adds to your schedule because you'd have to bid all that equipment.
It adds a lot
and-
of time to the pre-purchase, yes.
Yeah, so,
But does it help you in the design if you know what the equipment's gonna be ahead of time while you're designing?
well, we specify what we're gonna design. So,
And
you
then we
know,
go out.
and then we would go out to bid.
So you're limiting the number of
Mhm.
pieces of equipment they're gonna allow.
So we might indicate in the specification you know, because we want to use a specific type of process. You know, we may design it around that, and we may even call it out as proprietary and write in a price and do all those things. We haven't even
Right.
worked through any of that with the design team. But usually for all the other components of the process, you can name there's multiple pump manufacturers and there's, you know, multiple other things. But there may be some things like the towns, all their communication uses Allen Bradley components. Town may want to have all Allen Bradley, even if it's on the water versus the sewer side, so that if you know, lose a PLC or something like that, you at least have comparable equipment and gets rid of communication, you know, differences and things like that. So there's some things that we'll need to get from environmental partners with regards to what they have now, you know, if there are other things that we would specify. And then what we've done on other projects is we'll write a letter to the town and say, these are the things that we think that you should design around, and then we would, you know, we use the preliminary design document that we did where we evaluated SBRs versus MBRs as backup to the type of technology that we might be using, say, on the treatment process, and then some of the other specialty items. We might say these, maybe they only make 2 of these kinds of pumps that we want. And so we would say, we'll name the 2 and we'll say or equal. And if, you know, some manufacturer in the next 3 years comes up with somebody that can meet that requirement, then we have to evaluate it in Mass General Law, but some of it really depends on the contractors we get. Some contractors don't want, they're like, you know what? You spent the time designing this. We want it, you know, we'll give you that. We'll negotiate, you know, and then some aren't. Some will say, I have a deal with this supplier. And that's how we usually do it. And so we'd like to use that. And then they'll either issue it as a or equal or as a substitution. And the contract documents outline what the process is for those kinds of things and when they can do it. They can't give us a substitution, or they're not supposed to, or they do sometimes, but they're not supposed to give it to us late in the project. It's supposed to happen in like the first 90 days. But or equals is where we get into a, you know, is it really an or equal, you know, that kind of stuff, so.
Depending on how many pump stations we're gonna have in the collection system, it may make sense to actually standardize, right? So we may look into, okay, what do we want to do, like flight, build around, maybe we could get a letter from the town and town council to say, okay, for the purpose of maintenance and operation in the future, we want to design or want to purchase just simply sole source the flight, right? Or somebody else that, for us, I think this is something we will consider down the line. On the treatment plant, I'm not really sure. That's something for you guys to think about too. So.
I mean, there are battle waivers too.
Yeah.
Availability.
Yeah, I don't know how much luck you guys have had in the past. We've had, it's a chore even getting the certifications, and to get a waiver is, it's a lot of paperwork and taken a long time getting approved. But we'll see. It'll really come down to, we haven't even really, dove into it to see what kind of issues we're gonna be up against with that. But it's a good point too.
So can I go back to this SRF funding thing? So what happens after this goes in?
So you get ranked and you get point system.
And when did you say that happens?
So it's due in a few weeks.
Yeah,
I mean, they rank them pretty quickly. So I could just call a couple of my contacts and you kind of, so we would know like what we are assigned, but then we wouldn't know what.
you just know a
everyone else.
number, but you don't know where the funding.
They issue,
They'll tell you informally, but then officially probably like January.
they issue a draft and they've been trying to push it up, but it used to be December and January, and then it shifted. I mean, we got some as late as February or the beginning of March, and then they've come back. So I think they're trying to get it back in that time period. They'll issue a draft list. And then of the ranking, and then they'll issue a final list once they kind of figure out if, you know, projects fall off the chart.
People move up.
And then once we're on the list goes to the Cape and Islands Water Protection Fund, and that board would vote to approve money for those projects, and that's 25%. And how they're doing it now is they will give you 25% of the debt service each year. So
That's how they're.
it
so
used to
funding
be they
means-
would just give you the cash, but
Right.
now they'll pay the debt service so that our money is lasting longer.
Yes.
But with no interest.
Hopefully they won't charge interest. Hopefully the SRF won't be charging interest. Hopefully we'll get that 0% that we chased for water and
Right, but so you said you go to Cape
Right,
Cape and Islands.
and they give you 25% of
debt
the
service.
total number
Yep, the total
each
number.
year.
That's for
interest-free.
debt service.
Yeah, but the total, it's 25% of the total number,
Let's say it's 200 million, it's fair number.
Yeah.
So they're gonna give us
50 million.
$50 million.
Yeah.
No
Yep.
interest.
Right.
So where does SRF fit into that? Am I?
SRF is the master. So SRF decides who gets the money, what the rank is.
Yeah.
Once they've decided, the Cape and Islands Water Protection Fund, our regulations as an entity say that we use the SRF plan. So if you're on the IUP, the intended use plan, you get money. You get the 25% if you're on the plan.
Each year.
It's a given.
And SRF is also the financial agent, so in other
So they're
words.
the bond issuing.
They,
Yes,
we, instead of in lieu of going up to the public markets to bond $200
Right.
million. We get the $200 million through SRF. We don't need to go out to bond. We have all kinds of bond paperwork we need to do,
right. It's
No,
not
yes.
easy, but
but it's not a
It's
public.
internal, so.
But we didn't go to Cape and Islands.
it didn't exist for water.
Oh, I see.
So that's based on the short-term rental tax, 2.75% is set aside for
Great.
this particular purpose.
And not to get off topic, but Fred and Steve, since you're both on the finance committee, and we'll be talking about this the next meeting, you've heard me say this probably already. The $1.5 million of short-term rental tax that we get each year, we've been stewarding and not incorporating it into our budget.
Right.
So
Just
the
for
idea
this.
is we're using it right now for the design money that we're bond that we're paying off. If we can line this up with the permanent financing, that will come on board when that design bond is paid off, and we'll repurpose the 1.5 million for the longer term bond.
Right.
So we have 1.5 of our own, and then we got 25% from Cape and Islands. Hopefully 0%, hopefully some subsidy, and then we'll have to figure out the rest.
So the
I
balance
guess
is
it's
gonna be a bond issue at some point. There's some,
Won't be a bond issue,
No.
it's all through SRS,
oh,
but how do you pay for that? You gotta
But
pay
we
the
have to
SRF
pay,
back.
we have to
Okay.
pay the debt service.
But are we're getting 25% of the money, interest free or not?
Yeah.
Interest free.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, you just said if we have to pay interest.
Well, there's the SRF program is a loan program that either gives you 2% or 0% interest.
Right, I'm familiar with that.
Yeah, so that's
we're
the,
gonna-
so that's
which
the
one are we
starting
gonna
point,
get?
and
We
then,
need to get high points so that we qualify for
for the
zero.
zero. Oh, I
So
see,
you-
okay.
Will we know that when you get the ranking?
Yes,
you won't
Well,
know,
no.
you'll get a letter, you won't get.
I'm sorry to beat this. point,
No,
but
I mean, no,
not-
I'm-
We didn't get it right when we did water,
You
so
won't-
I just want to.
You
but
will
that's not, It's,
It wasn't your fault, I'm not.
no, it wasn't offered because we're too late. That's why I don't wanna be too late for wastewater. See what I'm
So
saying?
We kind of sold water on the fact that we're gonna get zero, we didn't get.
Well, that was unfortunate.
I don't want,
wasn't
I don't
here.
want to do that again.
The 0% loan is part of the SRF application. So when you file the SRF application. So the step after the IUP getting listed is you still have to apply and they still have to accept your application. So you have to meet all the requirements of the application like you had to do for water. It's a different application, but it's the same idea.
Mhm.
And then there's a whole section in there that's on 0% financing and you have to check basically 5 boxes. And if you check those 5 boxes.
Yeah.
And DEP reviews all that and they feel that all the other boxes for the application for the SRF are met. And you meet those other 5 boxes, they will send you a letter. Probably right before you bid, that says. Congratulations, you're eligible for the 0%. You're not gonna know. They're not gonna issue that formally until. Right at the end of the project, right at the end when you're getting ready to go out to bid.
For the actual building.
For anything, yeah, for any of the project on the SRF, so you'll know. You'll know you're listed on the IUP in January, right? And then that'll determine whether you're going, so if you're listed, if you're not listed, then you're either having a conversation with DEP, why did we, how did we miss? How much did we miss by, blah, blah, blah. Or you're gonna be on that list, and then you'll start the application process. And you'll be filing an application in October, or by October
This
15th.
October.
No,
Next
next October.
October.
You get basically a year and 2 months.
Oh,
from-
you have to go to me, you're gonna get the money at town meeting. Right?
2025, yeah. It'll get appropriated. We won't start spending it, obviously, for another whole year.
So then between October and then the June 30th deadline for environmental justice money. Of the following year,
Which
you
is
finish,
26.
yep, so you finish all your design, you make sure the DEP is satisfied and DEP satisfied on the SRF and all your other permits and everything are in line. Then you'll be asking for permission to advertise and then ultimately permission to award after you bid the project. And there's multitude of times when projects bid at risk because they're still waiting for some last piece of whatever it is, but presuming you get all those things squared away. And as long as your contracts are signed up by the June 30th deadline, you'll have hit all those requirements and, then you'll know. You'll be, at that point, you'll be signing up you'll be going through all your loan questionnaire and things like that with regards, because you'll know what your bids were, so you'll know what your project cost is. You'll have presumably gotten your 0% loan letter. That says, yep, congratulations, you met all the requirements, you get 0%. And then, yeah, the SRF money, as you know, is just a loan, but the nice thing is if you get 0%, you're not paying any interest, and then they take
Forgiveness.
25% off the top of that, plus whatever they give you for environmental justice, and that's just a function of how many environmental justice projects there are, so they have a pot of money. And then they determine, where in the environmental justice realm you fall and how much is available, and then they knock off another, I haven't actually seen one in a while.
And that changes every year. I mean, they'll say you're gonna get this percentage, and then sometimes if they have extra money, we'll get more. Like this past year.
So. Sorry to continue to ask this again, but
I'll be it to.
You guys are fine.
so
Go ahead.
160 million is what you're throwing out, plus or minus as a total cost. SRF is 50. And then there's this 25% from the Cape and Islands. Does that mean the town still has to go to the public market? I'm confused.
First of all, SRF is at 50.
Oh, I guess I thought it was
For the
50.
50.
They'll do
approve the
50,
whole amount.
they'll approve the
Oh,
whole,
it
they
keeps
only
going, oh, it
do,
keeps
only do
going.
50,
Okay.
you'll only see, so if it's 160
At once.
million.
Okay,
On the
I
IUP,
see.
they'll list your project and they'll say $50 million, and you'll be like, oh, it's 160, and they'll say, and what they've done is. they'll put an asterisk or whatever and
refund,
basically in the next program, they'll take your balance and keep spreading it over subsequent
So we're gonna
SRF
get-
I'm sorry, I'm
programs.
just trying to.
So we're gonna get $160 million loan from SRF,
Okay, I got you. But,
Then we'll have
but
to
not
pay
in
it
one
back.
tranche, it's multiple,
Right.
okay,
and then we'll have to.
very cool, okay, understood.
But is that 25% a grant or is it actually a loan?
It's a grant.
Okay.
They will give us 25%, period.
Gotcha.
Wow,
Jeff, can I just ask one follow-up question? Is there anything further on extending the loan payback on SRF or was talk about getting up to 40 years?
I don't know, I think it used to be 20 and then they made it 30, so I don't know if it's gone beyond.
They were
that.
talking about 40 this past year.
So, I can ask. I
That'd
can
be-
ask around people.
Because that's hugely, especially at 0% interest, because that 30-year fee is 5.3 million
A year.
a year. And that 160,
Principal.
if it's 0%, that's the.
yeah,
cost.
that's all you're paying.
That's our
If you
debt.
get- If you get to zero.
service.
Yeah, I just want to make sure.
Divided by 40, it's 4 million. So 1.3 a year.
That's what you gotta put on the tax.
Trying to remember the gentleman's
Yeah.
name. I don't know if you guys remember the,
No.
From the trust.
from the trust.
No, what?
Oh, Josh.
Josh.
Subtract 25%
Yeah, have you,
and then subtract.
I would
1.5
ask him.
Cause that's the SRF.
So think about it this way, let's use this, the smaller number, 160 million, hopefully 40 years. 0% would be $4 million.
That's
Debt
just on
service.
that.
That's the cost, that's the
That's the
debt
cost.
service, we've gotta pay that.
Yeah.
But we're gonna get 25% from Cape and Islands Water Protection Trust. That's $1
Million.
million.
Down to 3 million.
So now we've gotta come up with 3 million.
Then you get
We got a
environmental
million,
justice.
we got 1.5 million for short-term rental tax, hopefully that continues and holds steady.
So now you're down to.
So now we're down to 1.5 million. Now, do we get some other grant from a Mass Works for some of this other stuff?
Interesting,
Get
wow.
USDA
You will get the
Grant.
environmental justice, which will
And
be a
then
small percentage.
loan forgiveness, but we can't bank on all
No.
that. So chances are we're gonna have to either find a way, the default is the tax levy for that
that
remaining
1.5
million.
Right.
Those numbers sound nice to me.
Well, it's, at least we have some options we did not have for water, you know?
We average out on the bonds on water, was it 25 or 30?
30, we got some 40 from USDA, but not a lot.
But this is
But
why,
10 years.
You ever
has
get the
gone
money?
by. 10 years has gone by. We're a third of the way through that right now.
here's the other piece, I'm sorry, and you guys will see this next finance committee meeting. The really important reason to try to delay this first debt service payment on the big bond issue is we have a significant amount of debt drop off in the year 2030 from the water project, to Jackie's point.
Right.
And so we're stewarding that debt drop off. I think I can come up with about using our short-term rental money and backing off of it each year till we get to the end. We should be able to steward about 1.5 million of debt drop off between now and 2030. So that means, so everybody will feel. So what that means is. Theoretically, someone could say you're paying more taxes this year and next year and the year after that than you need to pay. But what we're doing is keeping it level. So when you have that big hit coming in 2030. It just keeps being level. Instead of having 1.5 million remaining to add to the tax levy, we've stewarded that drop off to replace the 1.5 million that's coming on.
So it's a very scary number, but it is. It's
Manageable.
manageable.
Sure.
It's
No,
not
I think we
positive,
understand
it's
it, but
manageable.
I'm gonna wait
We're
to
gonna
see
start
how you
getting-
explain it.
We'll start getting into the finance committee, but the key thing is. Need the 0, and if we can get 40 years, that's huge.
Those are the two keys.
We should
And-
start working on that maybe soon.
And hopefully we can refine the, I mean, we wanna go big, I mean, I'm of the go big at the PDF stage. Get your appropriation and have
Yeah.
the bigger nut, and then let's hope that the project comes down in some of the size so that you can, you never know. I mean, we literally in Harwich, You know, I bid a project, 2 contracts. That was pretty much the exact same size as what we were thinking about phase 1, about 10 miles worth of sewer, 5 pumping stations. We estimated about 50 to 52 million with all the other costs, police and all that stuff. And we got massively favorable bids because one of the contractors, RBO, wanted to win it. And they wanted to win it bad, and they wanted to win both contracts, so they did, and we came in almost $10 million under the estimate. So you never know. On the flip side, the reason we're also going big is that if everyone's busy.
Yeah.
They're working in Orleans and they're working in, they're
Yarmouth
still
and
doing
Dennis.
water systems and they're still, they're doing stuff in Chatham and they're doing Harwich and everywhere else. There's fewer contractors available to possibly, do these projects. So that's the risk. So that's why we wanna, if you start drawing, the further you draw from the Cape. And get away from the RJVs and the CC constructions and the RBOs. And you start getting up closer to Boston, then the costs get a lot higher, so that's where it really is gonna come down.
I think
So-
we saw that with water contracts, it's the bid environment at the time that you're actually going to do the work matters.
Yeah, which is a little bit of a crystal ball.
Yeah.
Well, it is, but it isn't, as far as which other jobs are gonna be designed, approximately when their bid periods are gonna be, I would assume, just talking to them.
Yeah,
We
but
know
there's,
what can be done at certain
So
times
you
of
can
the
almost
year.
chart out what your
That's true.
competition's gonna be.
That's true.
but there's a lot. So, and what we don't know,
Everyone is going after this incentive financing.
Sure.
and
For the same reasons in the same time period.
Exactly.
Yeah, and what we don't know is that, some of them have increased their bonding capacity and things like that. Right? So it all depends on how much, they've bitten off at any one particular time to go for those projects, so.
It's a ways away.
Yeah.
Talk about procurement later.
So we are gonna get you, hopefully at the end of this week. We talked, today, we're gonna try to go through and look at our costs again. We'll take into consideration that what Ziad brought up about the BABA requirements. Look at kind of where the treatment plant is, landing for us. So that you can have that, and then we'll write a blurb as well on how we did because there's a requirement for the basis of the cost development for that piece. So we'll draft up that piece of the discussion as well and send that over to you. So I'm hoping that'll happen this week, because it's obviously due next week. So,
It's an easy submission, so. Should try not to do it last minute.
yeah,
I guess the last thing I'll just add, kind of any concerns about where we're ranking, we kind of mentioned these points, but it's a tier system. They changed clean water to be like drinking water, where you have 5 tiers. Each tier you get 100 points. So if you're in tier 5, which is the best, you get 500 points, and that's always what your base is gonna be. So if you rank tier 4, you get 400 points. You get points for environmental justice, that we have our MEPA permit. If, they want us to do the work, but you can never get to 500 if you're in tier 4. Whereas just the nature of the project, we're in tier 5, we have 500 points. It's just a matter of where within that 500 we get. So there's not that concern. If we were submitting on tier 3 or 4, I mean, there's so many projects and so competitive. We wouldn't really have much of a chance, but we've seen being in tier 5, we kind of.
Right, and again, I mean, we're in tier, the Cape is under an agreement, where we have a legal
get to tier
agreement to
5,
do
so-
this, so we have to, the Cape, all the towns on the Cape have to move forward with plans for wastewater.
There was one of these documents that said we hadn't submitted something about the nitrogen load. And I thought that was all part of the TWB.
We
there,
don't wanna get into that discussion right
All
now,
right, that's right.
that'll take like an hour and a half.
Okay, fine. I just, there was one sentence I tried.
So-
we do that?
The good thing is, we don't have them, but Orleans didn't either, and they managed to get their project approved and at 0% financing, so.
Yeah.
But there's a
Been
lot, it's a
timing.
complex issue, and we will
All the work
definitely
that went
cover
into
it.
this, into this document. You guys did a great job. got it done in time. I appreciate that. It was good stuff. I read that last night, just loved it.
That's what I want to move to the good news, which is me.
Okay, second on the list, I mean, I guess there's not much to say, we have stuff to add, but we did get their approval yesterday.
Adequately and properly comply.
I saw that, key words there. In bold.
Yeah, I guess the things that I wanted to point out is there are things that you'll need to go through in your design to make sure that you're doing to the extent practical, you know, addressing some of these things. And the town did commit, through Hillary's nice paragraph on the EJ, so you do have that requirement on
And we're working that into, Hillary, we're working that into Kayla's communication plan.
Perfect.
So we're gonna take all those elements and all the
Yep.
stuff that Hillary's doing with the food programs and it's all gonna be great.
So.
It's
what-
perfect to all go together.
Yeah.
So all I would say is as you do those programs, create, create a little repository of documentation
Yep.
of these are the things that you've done.
Yeah.
We don't necessarily
Paper
have to
trail.
present those, but we want to make sure we have an easy paper trail to say, yep, we did this and we,
Yep.
you know, dropped them off at the Elks Club and we updated the webpage and we did whatever, all these other, you know, all these little requirements,
We're on it.
you know, make sure we got those, and then, we were trying to figure out why they asked us why we had to do anything with the Orleans, Conservation Mission, but.
Well, that's what I was asking, because it's 100% in Eastham. We
Yeah,
don't
it
have
is.
any.
I know.
I actually put a question mark there too.
I just,
Maybe because they're
I think they were thinking
considering
phase
phase two.
two.
Yeah.
But it really doesn't apply. There are, you know, notice of project changes that you would have to do if, you know, things change significantly with regards to, anything that might affect, the environmental impact to the process. So if all of a sudden we decided to double the flow because we wanted to sewer more in phase one or whatever it is, we'd probably have to go through that process. The other thing is that, if one of the sites for the, what we call landfill south pumping station, if you do end up moving forward with that location as a pumping station location, there is permitting that's gonna need to be done through solid waste with regards to the site assignment and things like that.
Oh,
I
yeah.
think as long as we're staying away from the cap and we can document that we're not even touching the cap, then it's a pretty easy process. But if you get anywhere near the cap, then.
Which we're not currently planning to do.
So it's just will all come down to wherever you guys end up putting the pumping station, if you guys end up siting one over there.
Can I just do an aside on that?
Go ahead.
So the south end of that site, it's just south of the landfill.
Yep.
There's a paper road that goes in there. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the map, but, it's not on this map.
Yep.
If you look at the parcel. And, there's quite a bit of space. We think that the path stops before the fencing that goes around the landfill, meaning that there's some area that's available. And that is a potential site for a regional dispatch facility. So does that impact? That impact your?
I guess, yeah, I mean,
Regional dispatch. So-
Police and fire.
Okay, I thought so, but it's.
you just have, I guess it'll depend
I
on.
mean, a
what
pump
the-
station
yeah.
doesn't take up a ton of space.
No, it's just a matter of making sure that whatever you do, I mean, it probably could be done in, you know, coordination with that site. I mean, if you're gonna develop that site, you might as well
And
carve out a little space to put a pumping station, but that'll really be discussions with EP and on how that's gonna be laid out and, you know, how big that station ends up being. We had envisioned that would probably be a primary station. It's a very important station because it would serve a location wise, but if you tend to do more of the, you know, the ideally just south of Route 6, in this, shaded area, that's just like due west of Salt Pond. If you end up doing more of that, and because if you can locate a pumping station down there and get gravity through a lot of that area. Then you can make some of the other areas smaller, or you can decide to, we kept the targeted watershed management plan large enough that. You could sewer anything inside of basically that red line, and they should allow you to do it. It will just affect the flows that would come to the treatment plant, so we would need to know where that is. But you could reduce some of the areas by whatever balance you're picking up down in that lower area. The lower area is gonna get you, the reason we didn't, just so everyone understands, the reason we didn't target that originally is we didn't think we had a pumping station site over there, and it was all gonna have to be low pressure. And we know how much everyone loves grinder pumps, so we just avoided that location. It's actually a really good location for nitrogen removal and things like that. That if you can target that area, it's probably better for you. And then you can make the decision of, does that station pump up to, the landfill south? Does it pump up directly to the collection system above that goes to the treatment plant? You can make all those decisions, but that was why it was done the way it was done. So we tried to give you some flexibility on that.
So I would say with MEPA, we get extra points with SRF. So you guys have time for the ranking.
Thank God.
Okay.
And then the next steps would be, I mean, I'm sure we've already read and have stuff highlighted, but we always just go through, make sure everything, there's no errors. That remember when we went through Belfry, they kept calling it gas utility in the permit instead of water, so. We'll just see if there's anything that they made a mistake with, and then. We started kind of drafting, like what Jeff was talking about, is we'll tabulate a list of conditions in here, things we have to meet, and track the status of them and make sure we're meeting them and how we're meeting them and things like that. Kind of put this more palatable list as opposed to 50 pages of text.
And this notice of intent to the USDA, that's just a formality. Says here that,
What page you on?
Oh, yeah, I saw
on
that.
page 6. Project proponent acknowledges it will require filing notice in the United States for a vote.
EPA or the.
Page 6 down the bottom page, right?
Why is my page?
Environmental justice.
Yeah, which section is it in? What's the heading above it?
NPDES construction general stormwater permit.
That, you must be in the DEP level.
And
Sorry.
DES
Oh,
construction
yeah.
general permit from the EPA.
Yeah, that's a construction permit. So,
That's a ways down the road.
so what, I don't know what EP has done, what we've done in the past for our collection system projects, because that's mostly where our disturbance will be, although we may disturb enough land at the treatment plant that we'll do it as well in the treatment process, is we would draft up a preliminary stormwater pollution prevention plan. Now, usually you can put it on the contractor to do that. But sometimes if you're going through conservation, you need to have that ahead of time to get through conservation permitting before you have a contractor. So we would draft one up, and what the NIPD's permit under general construction is actually a joint permit between the town, is a joint permit with the town and the contractor, but we always force the contractor to file it. So
How's this?
they file that, so they'll file with NIPD's, a notice of intent that basically says, hey, we're doing this project, we're gonna be disturbing X number of things. We have a stormwater pollution prevention plan that's done in accordance with, your requirements and whatever the check boxes are, and they have to file that, and they have to give notice to US EPA, because in Massachusetts, they are one of 2 states that doesn't, that has to, that this goes directly through US EPA versus other states where they do it through the state itself.
Yeah.
And anyhow, they'll file all that stuff, then they're required to meet the requirements of the SWIP. And there's reporting, and then they have to file another document at the end that just basically says, hey, we're done. We're done the construction, but it's all related. It's not like a NIPD's permit for like an effluent disposal into a river or an ocean. It's really, hey, you could be creating stormwater runoff that could go to waters of the United States, and therefore, based on the amount of disturbance that you're doing in your project, you have to make sure that you're protecting those things from,
Gives them an opportunity to have some mitigation requirements if they're going to be.
Well, does our own conservation commission commit to this at this point, or
And yes,
somewhere else?
no, they.
No, they would come in
yeah.
they would come in before this. So basically you would,
I remember that we had. What is it? Sorry. Never mind. Thank you.
It's a lot of permitting.
sorry,
Right, I think that covers MEPA. And then next, I just kind of have, Jeff already started explaining it well. I figured it was just worth going into what EP and GHD are working on right now, critical path items, what we've started on. So the first would be GHD working on the hydrogeo evaluation report, which I think it's 83, so 33.
yeah, so we just, right now, we're working on the scope of work, so I just talked to Lauren today, just to make sure that we could finalize the pieces, so we can submit that, and then we'll start the process, so we haven't really, we're no further, or not much further than we were the last time we met at that point, but we're planning on getting that submitted shortly.
So that's actually my biggest worry.
Yeah.
Right now, is it? Are you working on a scope of work to run by DEP that they will then say, yes, this is sufficient? Or are you working on a scope of work? Costs for us? No, it's
So it's the
DEP.
former.
Okay.
So it basically, DEP has a whole shopping list of things they want in the scope of
Yes.
work, and they basically have you write a report. That, I don't know, I don't understand why it's called a scope of work, but I'm not gonna debate.
No, I'm glad, no, I just wanted you to clarify it. I'm glad.
Yeah,
I think my concern is we did all of this testing. And the first time we met with DEP, it was obvious that they hadn't read your technical memos. They hadn't read, so I was able to, like, in my head, answer questions that they were asking, like, did you read it? Because we answered that. We studied 4 sites. We have so I'm just wondering how much it's gonna cost to add these extra conditions on
So
to.
the one thing I don't know right now is, we captured, so in our budget, we had the modeling and we had the site investigation for, they were gonna want us to do extra test pits and things
Yeah.
like that. So we carried budget for those things. What is unclear is I have a scope and I haven't had a chance to go through it from another project where we did some wetlands investigation
Okay.
to look at the wetlands that might get impacted.
Right,
So,
and they perhaps will ask us for testing, like over time, like what is it like now and what it would be like if we put however many gallons in the ground? Does the vernal pool get higher?
Yeah, I think we're gonna have to do that with models. You're not gonna be able to.
Right.
You're not gonna be able to
Okay.
recharge enough water to demonstrate anything over, that way. So that's the one piece that we're incorporating into the scope right now. So I just got that. So we're incorporating that into the scope of work. And then as soon as we get that incorporated, we're gonna send that off to DEP and then set up a follow-up meeting right afterwards to say, all right, we sent this to you, when can we actually sit down to talk with you about it?
Mm.
And then when they give us our blessing, we're gonna start with some of the modeling beforehand, because we're just,
You
we know
have to,
that,
or you can't design it.
yeah, we know that they're not going to have that many comments. We figured the bulk of their comments are gonna likely be around what additional investigation is needed to document whether or not the critters that live in the vernal pool are all gonna die if they drown, or, you know, if they're gonna survive, and that's not a, you know, it's, you know, whatever that situation is, so, so that's where we stand with that, and then most of that document is actually gonna be incorporated into the actual, you know, hydrogeo report. We just regurgitate pretty much everything that we have in the scope of work, and then we fill in the new modeling and the wetlands investigation that we have to, of whatever extent that we have to do.
What's the result of that work? Is that the step one of getting the permit for them, it's DEP to give you the discharge permit?
Yeah, so they basically have like three major steps. The first step is the scope of work. The second one is submitting the hydrogeo report. And then once they approve the hydrogeo report, then you can submit the groundwater discharge application.
And that's what some folks up Cape have been having problems with them actually finalizing their work on
Yes.
the last step, I guess.
Yep, so Dennis,
Yarmouth just got
Yarmouth,
it back.
Falmouth, Mashpee are all in various different stages of going through this, so.
But my understanding from talking to the other towns, and I don't know if yours is the same, Rich, is that their situation is much worse than ours. Like, I mean, really, we have a vernal pool. They have whole bodies of water that, right, Hillary, that they're impacting. So it seems like it's not
Each one,
apples to apples.
no, each one has a different situation.
Yeah.
So all four of those towns that I named have four completely different situations.
Nice.
You know, so we're trying to take from some of the things that we're doing, at least we found with the Mashpee, looking at those, and then our exposure to what's going on in Dennis and things like that, trying to, you know, work through this. And luckily, we had done a lot of the evaluations that they wanted. The one thing we needed to do is had we known at the time when we were doing the groundwater modeling that there was these other
Higher
requirements that they
percentage.
wanted, and they wanted us to model it a certain way, we would have built the model that way,
Yeah.
but we didn't. So we built a more refined model than some of those towns did. So we had less tweaking to do, but we still gotta tweak it, because we do wanna reduce the amount of what DEP feels is being impacted. So I wanna get that
Right.
tenth of a foot.
So a lot of the
impact
problems
rate.
these other towns are having was resultant of the model, and we can tweak that model and hopefully minimize the amount of
Yes.
questions.
Some of it's that, and some of it's just the location. Some of them are just, they're a lot closer to surface water bodies. Or there's other situations, or their model was run a different way.
We don't have many other alternatives. so-
No, I mean, that's, well, that's.
No, and that's one of the DEP guys said something like, you know, it's not our fault that you put water towers in certain places or whatever. And I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe they said that out loud in a meeting. It was horrific. You know, it's like we have tons of extra space we can put these things on when we're skinny and long, basically.
Yeah.
With tons of water all around us.
Yeah, I mean, what is it, 7 miles wide or something
Yeah,
like that.
yeah.
I mean, it's crazy. I mean. So anyhow, that's what we're trying to work our way through. And then what it's gonna have a bigger effect on right now is. You know, my concern is that phase 2 is gonna be drastically impacted by
Yes.
this. Phase 1, we might be able to mitigate, and then that'll be a discussion of, hey, do we have to try to send some of the flow somewhere else
Right.
under phase 1?
Do either of you know what's the recharge capacity in Orleans, the creek? Are they,
You mean with the work wells?
well, isn't one of the recharge areas, is it Skakit Creek or Skakit Creek? There's always a question of how much could that absorb?
I don't know beyond the fact that I think some of it's how much they can actually get into their wick wells, and then the other is how much either nitrogen or water could go to, whatever the downstream receptor is. I think there's probably a couple factors that play into that.
I was curious if they had future capacity to bring in additional.
I think they do, right? But the problem is they're still designing their
Well, they're-
They
system.
still have to find out
Right.
what their actual flows. are
Yes.
gonna
And that's the problem. I mean, we asked
That's
them.
why they won't commit.
Yes, that's why we asked them like 2 or 3 years ago. God, it seems, maybe it's been 3 years.
But they're much
Much
more
more open now.
open now than they were 2 or 3 years ago. So it's moving in the right direction as long as they don't build out too much.
Yeah, the advantage they have is they have a location in town that's, 150 feet above groundwater. So you don't. You may have spots like that, but maybe they're not town controlled or things like that. A lot of the places that we looked, you weren't, I think tea time was 40 plus and maybe the same over it.
And in the zone 2, we're just in the zone 2
there's not
anyway.
two,
But to me, the irony of the worrying about the vernal pool is that really, as the crow flies, less than a mile away, we are in the total reverse situation with water, where we have to measure that we're not taking out too much water to affect the vernal pools. And now a mile away, we have to worry that we're putting back too much
We don't want
water.
that
to-
water.
Hillary, we won't have to worry about natural heritage or anything. Should we get, what other kinds of like environmental? If it's a true vernal pool, will we have any?
We'll have to make an application to natural heritage as part of the notice of intent process with the commission.
Hey, we can't hear you. I'm so sorry. It's like you're underwater.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, when we apply to the Conservation Commission, the application will go to Natural Heritage, and if they want to make conditions at that time, then they will.
So it's later in the process that we might find out about that.
Yeah, it'll be, I think the treatment plan will have to do it. It's the collection system may or may not, depending on where you are. And then we typically do that, and if we think that we're gonna be impacting those areas, we'll reach out as well, but, this may be like an indirect kind of thing, so maybe best just to do it. Conservation.
They also review the MEPA application, and we did not get any comments from them to date, so.
Oh, that's good. Maybe.
They reserve their rights.
Yep.
All right, well, that's my biggest fear is that.
So,
hydrogeological.
so on this hydrogeological evaluation report. You're about to work on the scope of work, then you're gonna do the report, and then what happens? What's the third?
Then
step?
once it gets approved, then we can file for the groundwater.
Which
discharge.
gets the report or the?
Well, we have to get the scope of work approved to do the
The data.
hydrogeo report. Then we have to collect the data, and then we have to issue the hydrogeo report, and then they have to approve that. And before they'll let us apply for the groundwater discharge permit, we have to have the hydrogeo approved.
So that's the third thing you're after, or is that something?
Yeah, so the third thing will be the groundwater it's all part of the groundwater discharge permitting process.
Mhm.
It's just broken into those are the 3 big pieces.
It's 2 separate permits.
Which is?
It
But
is,
it's a
but they,
Combine like prerequisites, so you have, I think the hydrogeo, I think it's on the table, I think it's 83. Where you do, like what Jeff was saying, a pre-scope meeting, you have to follow steps, the pre-scope meeting, the submittal and the scope of work, and then the report. And then all of that gets approved, and then you submit your separate, like, I think it's 79 or something like that. Groundwater discharge.
so I consider them all one process, but they're technically 2 pieces. We've already done the pre-scoping meeting because we had that.
Yeah.
A while before. We just need to get done the scope of work.
When are we trying to do that?
I'm trying to do it before the end of this month.
Okay.
That's what I want to do. So, like I said, Lauren and I were talking about it again today. To just make sure that that's moving forward. So,
Excellent.
Jeff, is there any testing to be anticipated as part of the hydrogeo report? Or just simply gonna do modeling?
no, it'll be testing too, so. We'll have to do whatever they want us to do for the wetlands, so we have a proposed scope, and the reason that we're submitting this is because this is what they approved for another community to do similar. Wetlands evaluation, so we're gonna, presumably propose the same thing, and then. There's a process. Which always confuses me on when they want it done, it's changed over the years, and I haven't done as many treatment plant projects recently. But they want us to come out and. Observe test pits and percolation tests in the exact location of the effluent disposal beds.
Hmm.
So the key is that we have to be far enough in design, like we know where we want to put them, but we have to be far enough in design and, we have to have that site meeting with DPW to make sure that there's no other. Major concerns about the path we're going down. And then we can set up, if we feel that those spots aren't really gonna change, then we're gonna, target those spots. What we may do is we may do. Some in the other proposed future beds, because if we decide to change the orientation, at least we'll have approved.
Smart.
Field testing in the general locations of all those, but we want to review that with DEP before they're like, no. We don't necessarily agree with, what you're doing. Usually they're pretty open about that. So, and it sounded like when we talked to Drew months ago that he was open to working with us on coordinating that, so we're all on the same page. So that is the field work that does have to be done.
Yeah, and the reason I asked this because obviously that potentially could impact the plant capacity, right? So
Yeah.
I know you had your initial value was 115,000 gallons per day. And if we, highlight this phase one in the collection system and now the capacity of the plant is reduced, we'll have to adjust accordingly.
Yeah, it's easier to make it smaller. It's a lot harder to make it bigger. I mean,
Yeah,
I
for
think,
sure.
I think the reality is that groundwater modeling is really gonna tell us, what kind of flow that is. So it's right, unfortunately, it's a bit of an iterative process. It's gonna be some of you and the town working out, well, what is the extent of the collection system and rerunning the flows and seeing what your number is. And hey, this is our desired, value, and then us going through and modeling. And doing the refinements in the model and seeing what changes that made from what we modeled before to what we're modeling now. And, see if we see those improvements and then, playing with that. We may ask for, if we want to try to reduce some of the footprint, we may see if we want to ask for a higher recharge rate right off the bat. If we can demonstrate again that the recharge is good and we have the study that we did before. Maybe we ask instead of for 7 gallons per day per square foot, we're asking for 8, 9, so that we can, keep those beds as small as possible. And we may recommend oversizing the beds. To give you some, if up to wherever we can model. So that we can maximize the recharge there, even in a future phase kind of thing. So we gotta play some of those, we're gonna play some of those games. I mean, I hate to use that term, but that's kind of what we're doing. We have to sort of,
That's what it is, right?
do some more of that iterative, and it really comes down to. If we make the model changes and run the model the way we had it in terms of the flows that we used. Hopefully the mounding rings get smaller, get closer in towards the treatment plant, and then we can see that, oh, it's really only that one wetland that's due west over in that, it's kind of just the other side of that. I don't know what that property is. It looks like, it's like cleared and
Holmes Road.
West of,
it's due west of the DPW building. There's like Well, at least in Google Earth, it looks like it's pretty clear. It's,
I don't know.
it's whatever this, you can't really see it in the green, but it's whatever the big open parcel that's right there.
Oh,
It's really
Oh,
inside the bike. path.
Atlantic, it's a trail,
yeah,
RV park.
Oaks, Atlantic Oaks.
Is that what it is?
Yeah, that's like a 20 some odd acre parcel. And there is like a, is that what?
That's where
vernal pool they're
that's,
worried
I
about?
think the vernal pool is in there.
Oh, I'm sorry, I misunderstood. I thought there was a little pond in there, but I don't,
There might be a pond and a vernal
maybe
pool.
that's. Okay,
Yeah, there's something right over on the other side, wherever that is. You know, maybe some of the, I mean, I don't know that, well, that was actually included, so. Well, no. And maybe it actually, it might be the, sorry, did I misspeak? It's
I
this,
thought it was.
it's this one, right? It's, sorry, it's the one just above. it. It's this. What is, whatever's right above it.
Is that the
That's-
Sheraton? Yeah, it's Holmes Road. It's Holmes Road. So it's in our
It's,
district,
It's in
that's
the-
in our,
it's in the bigger area, but it wasn't necessarily an area that we picked up. If I'm not mistaken. But somewhere over there, I think there's something over in that general area. Whatever this is,
this is Nauset Green.
yeah, because this is the DPW. And it looked like it almost looked like a sand pit with trailers and like. a
It's
construction yard.
It's our industrial park
Yeah.
area.
Okay,
It's an undeveloped, with the 12 acres at the end of that road.
Yeah, yes, which is why it's, you know, I mean, the poor things that are living in that vernal pool now are
like, you know, so, you know,
they've
maybe.
been oiled, you know,
Who knows?
Seafood
So-
liquid.
yeah.
So part of the discussion may be also that, you know, hey, if we're providing sewer service to that, you know, and it's already a heavily impacted, sort of viable, you know, wetland area, but that's, whatever that is, we get stuff full of, it's all good. Sorry.
I have some questions about flows and loads. So, my worry is when we were talking about flows and loads with you guys. Tea Time, Town Center Plaza, that whole development was, you know, it's like a vision, it's not, there's nothing set. So how does the town calculate flows and loads in what we hope to develop there?
You go conservative.
So I'd sit down with Hillary and say, we are thinking of this many units of housing, a restaurant, a community center, and we go through the flows and loads that way.
What
Okay,
do they call it? Well, I mean, we're required to do that as part of the SRF process, with a land use report or something like that.
oh, yeah, we have to
So
do
you gotta
a whole
determine your load,
overall.
but then you
plan.
gotta provide for daily, processing capacity, or something more than that, because obviously you don't wanna build your plant to just what you think you need, you would have some room for growth.
Yeah, so we would get whatever your allowance is for that redevelopment, and then we do peaking and things like that. So the key is that what we would prefer not to get from EP is we don't really want Title V numbers, because Title V numbers are peaked. So that's why with all the water use data, for every place that has water use that you think isn't really going to change, those should be able to extract the water use data. When you look at, so what I had to do when you guys had an idea for tea time is they had a rough Title V flow. And so I took that and then I had to pare it down and then we peaked it up. Just so that we looked at it a little differently, as if it was on an average annual basis and then, you know, future and things like that. So what we did is we applied. Because we also weren't sure on what. The growth in Eastham, based on your study, was flat
Mhm,
or declining,
mhm.
right? So, but there's always the concern that, you know, maybe more homes are gonna be more year round as opposed to summer, or maybe they'll all stay summer, or whatever that is. we then looked at what the Cape Cod Commission did when they were doing their evaluations, and remember they had that MVP tool and things like that, so we looked at that and said. They gave a existing condition flow, which was wrong, but they gave an existing condition flow, and then they applied a build out factor to that. And we looked at what the difference was in those values. And we said, okay, well, that was about, they applied like a 1.26 increase, so like a 26% increase or something like that. So
Okay.
that's what we carried for a future flow development.
I'm just concerned because we are in the process of rezoning from Brackett Road to the Wellfleet line. And that rezoning is going to increase the potential density of that 2 or 3 mile stretch, 2 mile stretch probably. But still, that's where all our commercial activity is. So we need to get that right and also get our flow neutral stuff right so that, we can figure out how we're gonna.
And that's why we were wishy-washy in the report. I hate
know.
to say it, but we said, here are the flows.
No, I
based
know,
on
we
what
haven't given
estimated.
you anything, I'm not
And
saying.
then we said, these flows are gonna be reevaluated as part of of final design for the whole purpose of, one, you just built your water system and we had. Your data was ramping up, so we only had a ramp up of data. Now you've got
Okay, good.
a good chunk of those areas now probably have a good 3 to 5 years worth of data. So
Well,
you can,
especially in this area, we're gonna have good data.
so I figured that you would, you could relook at those, and then you'd probably be further along on what you wanted to do there, and I thought there was some redevelopment that you wanted to do here,
Yep.
and whatever might happen down there. So we knew that those might change.
Okay,
And so that's part of this iterative process is you guys locking in where your service area is and what those
Yes.
flows might be. We're gonna try to model conservatively right now. That's why we already have sort of a bunch of different, ranges of flows. And then, we're ultimately gonna have to run the model on the actual flows in order to submit the hydrogeo report. But we don't need that for the scope of work. We just need that for the hydrogeo report.
From a design standpoint, you need that.
Yeah, we're gonna need to know that, because we can't size any of we can't size any of the
When do
facilities.
you need that information?
We need it sooner rather than later,
Sure.
what it came down to,
well,
so.
Taylor and I will work on it.
Yeah, so
So-
we're working on this information and definitely we're all in agreement. We're not gonna rely on Title V flows, but we're gonna run both scenarios for us to understand. We're gonna rely on, I know you guys did the, 2017, 2018 water numbers, and I think we have a more updated version here that we're gonna run. And we're also gonna look at Title V and just compare the both scenarios here.
Yeah, just, we don't look at Title V as an average flow, so
Right.
just, that's the difference. So when you look at them, that's fine. We'll run with whatever, if you want us to design around that and set that as the average, and then we're gonna be peaking that, just keep in mind that could affect the process. That's why we've tended to do it around water use.
No, I think we'll, as see it said, and you said, we're gonna do a combination like you have been doing.
So, yeah, and you're gonna just, I think,
we have more of a sense of what might be developed there now than we did 2 years ago. That's all.
and I think you guys were talking. I think a month or two, you guys were looking at probably trying to establish what those values were.
Yeah.
And we're gonna be meeting, I don't know when our next meeting is actually, but, whenever we set that, we can just have that conversation. So we knew there's gonna be a time period in which that was gonna have to happen. It isn't ultimately critical right now because we have to submit the scope of work for the hydrogeo. We still have to do some other evaluations. And the evaluations that we would do in the field with regards to the hydrogeo, like the perk testing, doesn't matter how much, they don't care how much flow we're actually putting in there. I think it's still archaic that we're using perk tests to evaluate that. for effluent disposal, but whatever, that's fine, so that's what they wanna use, we'll do that. But that has there's no, connection between the perk test and the flows that we need, it just says whether or not the site is good and hopefully they're all less than 2 minutes per inch like they were when we did it before. And if that's the case, then we can default back to our hydraulic loading test where we did a larger basin and we loaded it with a lot more water and we did falling head and standing head tests and things like that to really demonstrate the projected performance. So I think I'm not, it's definitely a critical path, but we're not sweating it right now. I don't think you guys are either, so.
It's on our radar. Jeff will get you that information as soon as we get it. So I mean, Jack is gonna give an update of where we are here today, but I think we'll get you that information sooner than later.
Yeah, no, we understand, trust me, we know you're getting up to speed and you still have to have discussions with the town with regards to what that boundary is and what those other growth potential developments are. So.
Like you mentioned, it's a little bit iterative, or obviously we have the loading requirements, the nitrogen removal requirements and what you've written before, so we're not gonna put something together that's way larger, like we have boundaries that we're starting.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of our big, like Jeff said, critical path, getting that data over, coordinating on that, and then kind of like Jeff was explaining before, and we had meetings about kind of the red area was the initial area, and if we did the red and alternative, that would be too much. We were kind of saying, so we'll probably want to scale back the red area if we do kind of go south.
When you say too much for what?
So it's not too much, it's what it is it's more than you would need for nitrogen removal.
That's the minimum removal.
The minimum removal for salt pump. So the reality is, even if you do more, it still has a positive effect on Nauset estuary. And will have a trickle down effect on Town Cove and other places in Nauset. Like not all of Nauset is equal in terms of how MEP looked at it. But since we haven't got the new model, runs and DEP hasn't issued TMDLs and there's still some question about the MEP, report on DEP's side. The idea is that if you're able to sewer as much as you can with some of the, the PRBs. So the PRB is implemented as providing you some performance.
I think it's maybe.
This area makes a lot of sense.
Might be a good discussion for our internal committee here.
Yes.
So what Jeff's saying is, usually when you design these wastewater systems, because you need to, right, you're being forced, so you're designing it to the minimum amount of what you need to remove to achieve your goals. But there's other reasons why you might want wastewater, right? Economic development's a big one, right? So, we might not need to go down to tea time, but we want to go down to tea time because we know that's our economic development.
It's coming, yeah,
We're not
yeah.
gonna get what we want unless we do that.
Right.
But the same might be true in this alternate area. And I guess and I don't know who to ask this question to, but at some point, one of my bigger overriding concerns is not the 160 or $200 million, it's what's it cost to operate this on an ongoing basis forever? Because the $200 million is done in 30 or 40 years. And if we're not doing the alternate area, is our population to support the operation sufficient to do so?
Right. And the clarification is the area along Route 6 is not a tradable spot. Like that's pretty much almost all outside of the Nauset estuary. So that was always, you're right,
Extra.
that was always extra that you wanted to do.
Right.
Yeah,
So it's not like if you end up doing this, I wouldn't be, you wouldn't be having conversations of, oh, we'll just knock down some of the things that we want to do here. No, it's the idea you would keep the green area and the hatched area, and you'd really be shaving off
Some of
portions
that.
of some of these areas that you might not need to do or want to do,
Well, just maintain just the minimum, right?
just to
But I
maintain the
guess
minimum.
what I would, at some point, I'd like to,
Which
Well,
wants
you
to
get
go
the point.
bigger?
Yeah.
what's the alternative of, it
For
might cost
development
us
purposes.
a few more dollars in the capital cost,
Mm.
but in the long run, it's gonna have more
Generates
participants.
growth, development,
And,
whatever.
And just our ability to pay for it
because, you know,
annually.
500 or 600 people probably aren't gonna pay that service on, or the operating costs of a plant, but maybe 800 people can, more affordably.
And that's where I tried to leave this open, because I figured that there's probably the likelihood that you might add this and keep all this. And, and I think what I showed in the, I think I sent an email, I can't remember if I copied you, I think I copied. EP and Hillary. The flow difference to add, to have both isn't massive.
Oh,
So it isn't a massive stretch to go and add, that's like another, I think on average, like 20,000 gallons per day or
oh
whatever.
my God. really?
So, it's because this is like more dense, this is a little less dense, but it really comes down to, there's some deep sewers that you'd have to do in certain areas and things like that, so there may be some trade-offs.
But-
There may also be the ability that you could do it in a phased approach where you would do sewer, you would sewer certain neighborhoods, but you might stop. And set yourself up with your design that you could
Add them.
add them in later on, so
That's
you know, you
good.
wanna make sure that, you know, I know that EP will look at that.
And so what happens though, say we were to be able to do this whole area, right? Then what do we still have to worry about phase two? Phase two flows then might not fit at our current treatment
Phase
plant
one flow,
recharge.
I mean, depending on what comes out, the phase one, 20,000 gallons per day might be because we have to peak that and look at it on a peak flow basis with the modeling. Even the 20,000 is 20,000 on average annual, but the peak flow is gonna be 3 or 4 times that, so. It might still make it so that you might exceed the ability to recharge, that's the whole balancing.
And that's our biggest problem, is
That's
the
our-
recharge, not the treatment.
And I thought
No.
phase two was mostly IA.
And
Phase two
Phase two for-
phase two was established that you could. If you sewered, this would be the area, if you sewered all of that flow, we established what those would be, it was kind of like, first step is. While you're doing phase one, phase two would technically start in the evaluations of. Is DEP ever going to get to a point where they're gonna approve a number of technologies that can get down to less than. Some value that's gonna allow you to meet a future TMDL, and without knowing what the TMDL is, you don't really know what that limit is, but most on-site systems struggle. With anything less than 19 or 20. You can see it, you know, I mean, you know, the visitor center is a perfect example of that. You know, they have an operator, they have a treatment facility that was designed, you know, it's,
just doesn't work.
and they have trouble meeting it. Now imagine you have all those in everyone's backyard. And, you know, you get the people like the woman in Barnstable 10 years ago that turned the system on because she didn't. It was costing her money on power, so she just turned it off. But she wasn't supposed to turn her facility off. I mean, so
Well, that's why
it's all
I
in
asked
management, so.
about an hour ago about Orleans capacity, because it seems like that would be an opportunity to partner with Orleans if they're looking for flow, might offset some of their operating.
And we are meeting with them, well, we were meeting with them monthly, now it's less, right now it's less frequent, but. We are meeting with them, they just, until they do their full build out analysis, they
Yeah,
cannot answer
right.
those questions. They're open, they're just not sure, but they have a lot of, they don't have a lot of recharge areas either, which is also their limitation, so. Their treatment plant, they could make that 90 times bigger, but they can't.
They're limited
And they
by.
don't wanna give up that, they don't wanna give up that recharge capacity.
Yeah.
So what we did here is we basically said, phase two, first step is. Would you apply IAs on a big scale, which would mean that you'd have to have a management system and things like that to make sure people are doing it and what that monitoring program would be.
And we
And what the
could work
performance
that
is.
in, I mean, to
Yeah, my
your,
comment, yeah.
your friend's concerns, we could work that in like Wellfleet did, so that we were, the cost of perhaps putting some of those in the ground, the town would absorb,
kind of-
or would, like we did the mandatory hookups, we'd be like, okay, if you're in the mandatory district for IA, then we're gonna pay for some
We're
of
gonna
it
help
for
you
you.
out. Yeah, yeah.
And then what we said is then you'd have the regional discussion with, you're having the regional discussions with Orleans to see if they could actually take some of that flow and either treat it or treat it and recharge it. Ideal situation, they treat and recharge. Next ideal situation is they treat it. And then the last alternative is that would go back up to your facility up here. And then the question is, you might actually end up sewering
Then you would.
a connection piece between there because
Would
if
make
you're gonna,
sense.
if you're gonna be doing infrastructure through there, you might as well pick up as many people along the way as.
I was just thinking, I know Brewster
Brewster
has,
has plenty of space.
and especially with the sea camps property, it'd be perfect for like
I
spray
thought it would
irrigation.
be
Get rid of some.
So that,
humongous wigwells right along that front coast.
so that was the premise of phase two. And, so
was
we left it open that there were some steps that you would be taking to try to figure out. You know, where is this going from DEP's perspective, and then if they issued a TM, so the next thing that would happen that. Wasn't a real thing when we were doing this report, but is a real thing now. If they issue a TMDL for town code,
Mhm.
right? And all of a sudden, this now ends up on the nitrogen sensitive map that
Then
you're just
we're-
currently
yeah.
not on. Then all of a sudden, you need to have a watershed permit. And, you know, an NOI, so that was the whole discussion about whether or
That's
not
what we're
you,
doing with that
whether,
map.
whether you file the NOI or not, and. There's no, you're not mandated to do it for any of this area because it's not on the map. But as soon as it becomes on the map,
Yeah.
This is on the map.
Then it's a
then
requirement.
you get into that, whatever that cycle is. and
Was there
I-
any contemplated time frame between the two phases, like phase one now and phase two is 5 years from
It
now?
was like 20 years.
20 years,
Yeah.
although they say in the plan,
10 years.
10,
Yeah.
but we thought it was 20, because we've gotta get rid of water.
But the hatched area in
mean,
phase
it's-
one, that's a decision that has to be made soon.
Mhm.
And when does that decision have to be made? For the design purposes,
What was
The
the,
hatched
the
area.
hatched area in phase one, when does that decision have to be made?
that'll be made when you're deciding the flows.
Soon,
Few
Yeah,
months.
so,
few
Yeah, it
months.
has to be, yeah.
yeah.
Who makes that decision? Within the town, within the town.
Well, they'll make recommendations and then we'll,
Yeah.
talk about it, basically.
I mean, even phase two, if it goes to the plant, we'd have to consider how we want to size some of the piping.
Mm,
Yeah, so that's what so when we laid it out in the plan. We talked about that's why I mentioned that landfill south station might be. Oh, potentially a larger station, or you might have a larger station down here and it might pump, it all depends on how you wanna tie it in, but you're gonna have to size your collection system to where you think that possible connection point might be. So we figured, because we didn't know that we would have one here, so we figured this might all come up Route 6 and then. Come to here, and then this would pump up that flow plus the service area flow into the gravity. It's a short run to there, and then that would flow by gravity into the new station.
If we ended up doing this alternate area, more likely than not, that pump station would be part of a taking to get that pump station.
Yeah, so we'd have to do it at the same time, so it would be the May town meeting, the same town meeting that we're asking for money, we'd have to do a taking of that land.
Change your private roads.
Yeah.
Well, unless you may have already done that, so that was a question that I wasn't sure in terms of,
We
When
just
you
have
did
to
for the
go
water.
back and look at the deeds, I can't remember whether we did it for utilities or we did it for just water.
hopefully you did for
I think
utilities.
we did it for this water.
Oh.
That's the hatched area?
No, that's
Oh.
everything, we
Do you
took
have, any-
every private
Oh,
road.
every private
We
road.
had to do an easement for, and it took years to do
Oh,
all those
sure.
easements.
Probably, yeah, but you're gonna.
So if there are any that you haven't done in the future, definitely do it for.
Everything,
utilities,
yeah.
Yes.
It's, you know, this hopefully is our last utility.
That's nice to reference.
I know, yeah.
You're not the only town, I mean, like, lots of towns that had water systems before, all of them, they just taken it for water.
Yeah.
So it's kind of game.
But the good news is that we're very good at it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, you're
So
accomplished.
we've just done every single private road, so it's not like we can't replicate that pretty quickly. We'll just have Lori come back from retirement, she was in charge of it.
Yeah, tell Bob, come on now.
Exactly, he did a great job with that, it's very fast.
I'm not sure what point this comes in, but the plant design. And the locating of the filtration beds. Depending on the needs for that, there's a potential need to relocate DPW facility.
In the future, but.
That's the
I
20
think
years,
that's in the future.
yes,
So the intent was, the way we laid it out right now, is we were trying to, we're gonna be close. But we're trying to keep the DPW facility. Let's say. Or keep the whole facility, but some of its operational flexibility is gonna be limited because they're not gonna be able to drive all the way around.
and the salt shed has to go.
But the salt shed has to move,
The
and
reason
the
I-
fuel depot has to move.
Oh, that's big.
So I guess that's my point. If there's a eventual, I mean, the place is pretty dilapidated anyway. So if there's eventuality that we've got to do something and you're building a treatment plant that has typical office space for a treatment plant. Is it much further removed or much more to ask to say, can we get expanded office space to move at least the administrative operation into the plant?
Yeah, it's just we'd have to know what, so.
Is that a good discussion for this committee?
So the bottom line is, we would need to know what exactly you wanted to have. And then we would give you a proposal for what that increase in the design would be, because we were trying to keep things obviously as.
Right.
Small as
Small as
possible.
I'm just thinking more of like administrative offices. Obviously, the construction of garages and garage spaces.
No,
That's
we're not, yeah,
It's not what we're doing, but
Now, in the existing facility, is the administration part of that closer to where the beds are now?
yes,
I mean, because ideally, if we could
that's what,
knock off
that
that
out.
end
Right.
of the building and put that somewhere else, then
yeah, it's
That would
more
give us-
towards the landfill, so.
that would give us
That's
more,
the-
that would give us more flexibility on the bed design, because right now, I don't have.
I mean, so
figure,
maybe
but-
if we did the office space
Moved
and
into
then
the
kept the
treatment.
garage.
Yeah.
And moved into the, the administrative moved to the,
We might be able to
Rock
fit
the
another
treatment.
sand bin.
then in the future, when we gotta do a garage, we'll do a garage once we've sorted out what the space looks like.
Yeah. So the other thing that would be good to know is, because the other concern is that, we put a block. We said, oh, we might be able to do the DPW, but we didn't really look at, traffic patterns and what type of equipment,
Right.
and do you want to have drive-through? Like, is it a drive-through type of garage, or is it, bays where they just drive in each side, or whatever it is. It would be good to know what that information is now, like what you'd like to do in the future, so that. As we're at least looking at the layout of the site and the traffic pattern, we know that. Yeah, you're gonna be able to do it there, or you're not gonna be able to do what you wanna do in that location, you're gonna probably have to do that at some other location.
Okay.
And so that at least you're prepared for it, but right now, what we're trying to do is that whole DPW building. Garage and the administration part of it. We are close to, but we are not,
Taking it.
we are not taking. And because they're sand beds, it shouldn't be too hard for us we'll probably end up, instead of making it a square, we might cut off corners and things like that. We'll make the geometry work, they'll be funky looking shaped things, but we're gonna try to maximize the use of that area. Right now, it's just very cubicle-ish.
Mhm.
And we'll try to, maximize that, but if we know that we can get rid of that admin building part of it. And it doesn't affect the structural integrity of the rest of the garage, it's really like a tack-on building to that building.
It's really not.
You don't touch anything. but then they fall.
Yeah, so that's where it really comes down to, it really comes down to what,
Yeah,
we always get nervous when we're asked to modify an existing old building.
Oh, yeah, everybody does.
So
That's why the town hall project went so well.
We're in one.
I guess at a minimum, I think that the committee, as a future discussion, should consider the ultimate replacement of that building, it'll have to be moved.
As an item.
So should we provide now on the
Some
plant
plan.
being construction for some
Contingency for
some
moving
piece
stuff
of that,
around.
and whether it's just just
And
an
where?
administrative office piece, and that leaves a garage to do some point in the future. And I didn't, I wasn't sure about that.
So how many
I didn't
people,
realize
the
that
admin part, how many
tanks-
people are there?
That's,
6, 8,
So you have
12?
the water operations and clerk, and so maybe 4 or 5,
no, and then you got the DPW.
and then we have the crew.
So when you said, that's interesting, you said, well, you're thinking that it's now just one floor, but you make it 2 or 3 floors so that you could get more stuff in less of a footprint, is that what you were implying? By cubicles and
Oh,
different kinds of?
no, I guess what I meant is like right now, and I apologize for people on the TV. You have a DPW building that's like here, and this is probably the admin. And this is the garage, right? And then our sand beds that we're proposing look like this right now. And the site kind of does this, and the salt shed is here. And then the fuel depot is up here somewhere. It's a really,
Forget the sticker building.
in the sticker building.
Over there, yeah.
We're not touching that right now. So we're building this, but in the future, the other sand beds impact this, and we tried to move this over to another site. But for
But
right
take the
now,
admin, so it's totally offsite.
for phase one, what Rich was asking is, could we take this, maybe lop this off, which actually
Take it
gives me
somewhere
more
else.
room, and we put it over with wherever our, our SBRs are gonna be. This is, I really apologize for the
Yeah.
graphics, but, the SBRs would be up here, our influent pumping stations over here. I don't remember in terms of what we didn't have a whole lot of. We didn't do a whole lot of admin space. We tried to do the sort of the bare minimum of,
You mean by square footage? And what impressed me surprised me about the Orleans treatment plant is how much admin space they have. I mean, they had conference rooms and kitchens and
Yeah.
offices, and it was, it was like,
and that's a function of what you want, like, so Chatham, I can speak from.
yeah, Chatham
I
does,
know,
oh my God, that's
so-
like the Taj Mahal.
Yeah, so Chatham, they came in and they said, we want a training room. We want a whole lab, and we want the lab in 2 pieces because we want a treatment plant lab and we want a water quality lab. Because Dr. Duncanson was involved, and then we want the whole ops portion, and we want a mechanical room, and then we want a huge garage.
Yeah,
And because we had a Vector truck and we've got pickup trucks and all these different things, and they wanted all of those provisions, so they have a really nice facility, but it's big and it has a lot of stuff. And the Orleans one is certainly smaller than that, but it does
it's more
have,
compact.
but it has a conference room, and it has offices and some other administrative space. You can do whatever you want. It's just a function of having some more direction in terms of, do you
Well, that's why I
need,
mentioned it now, just to get.
Yeah, no.
yeah, so, what we don't know, and one of the decisions that you have to make through this process while you're doing this design, you should start now, if you haven't started already, is, what division is this gonna run under? How is it gonna be manned in terms of, is it going to be contract operations? Or is it going to be in-house town staff? Like, you've done some of that already with the water. Is it gonna be melded into the water system, or, how is that all going to happen?
And that's another worry, because I know in Orleans, they contracted out with Viola, so Viola took over the whole, there's no employee from Orleans allowed anywhere near that space. They've literally set it up like a construction zone where they have
Restricted.
100%. restricted.
But you don't have to be that way.
No.
So Chatham has contract operations and they control, they said, you work for us.
Oh, good.
You're under the DPW, these are your responsibilities.
Because that's
You're using,
very strange to me.
you're using our facility, we paid for it, we own it, blah, blah, blah. You just come in and you tell us, you know, how much your trucks and how much all these other different pieces are. So you have that flexibility to be able to do that, and I would suggest talking to Chatham, talk to Harwich, talk
Yeah.
to, you know, and then maybe even talk to some of the other towns that do it, like, so Falmouth and Barnstable do it in-house.
Mhm.
So, but they're bigger, so they, you know, they have the ability to
Yeah.
do some of that. I think P-Town is they were design build, and so I think they're contract ops.
We did the
So-
same thing, what you're saying in Yarmouth, and I would submit that's the way to do it. You gotta own the contract. Otherwise, you're gonna get results that you have no knowledge or accountability for, and you
Mm,
Yeah.
get what
It's
you get.
bizarre,
And,
yeah.
and you
But
need,
you need some strong people to manage that, and,
yeah, you need a head of that. You need somebody that's above your contract ops, that's reports to the town that basically, hey, wastewater falls in my purview, and under me, I have a contract operations team that runs the facility for me.
Right.
You know, that's what you really, if
But
you're gonna
anyway,
do it that way, that's.
doing it ourselves, it's the same with the water, but apparently the regulations have changed, but everybody from after Barnstable down has problems having their own employees that require licensure.
Yeah.
Because when that person leaves, then you're kind of screwed, and you don't have them required minimum licenses. Whereas if you contracted it out and you're to theoretically a bigger company,
they'll always
they'll
have
still
people.
have someone on the
Yeah,
license, and
yeah.
they might have to drive from off Cape, but you know, they can get them here if they have to maintain compliance with a contract
Yeah.
with DEP.
Mm,
And that
That's
is,
their problem, not ours.
mm.
yeah, and that's an industry problem. Right now, is the wastewater, water industry is struggling to.
Fill jobs.
Fill jobs for this type of work. No, you know, there aren't as many people that wanna go into it, and then you're just, the further out you go on the Cape, the further away, cause it gets more expensive to live, and you know, for whatever reason, maybe the housing itself might not be as expensive, but maybe getting to, you know, grocery stores and BJ's and, you know, off Cape, and, you know, there's other costs that, you know, as you know, you guys live out here, that you deal with. And getting operators to be able to do that, that's why some of them have ended up being
So,
contract ops.
The water, whatever water admin we have, are there offices somewhere in this building, somewhere else?
It's
No.
at the DPW building, there's
DPW.
one office,
It's one little room, one room.
yeah, one room.
When we, especially when we go through the SRF stuff. They're gonna want us to have the enterprise fund set up for that, so that's another town meeting.
Yeah.
And does anybody have a recommendation? I mean, I know the easiest thing to do is just doing wastewater enterprise fund, but, that innovations, I was trying to. Just don't know if I ever followed it through, I don't know if you're intended doing it or not, but the under consideration was instead of two separate, is to keep them commingled into one. The theory that, so I know you're not supposed to, you're supposed to set rates to recover costs for each utility, but. Tight, in a pinch, you could allocate costs between each a little bit easier if you've had it perhaps a water resource enterprise fund instead of two separate enterprise funds. So have either of you seen that anywhere or? Care, does it impact anything?
I haven't, yeah, like.
Some of the language, yeah, they're very specific. All right, so we have 10 minutes left.
I think the only other I just wrote here, it's like very much a draft that we'll go through more together, but
Oh, the
just,
schedule.
just the list of, it came up last meeting, so I wanted to have some basic draft to start with, we'll meet about and get more refined, but just, yeah. It's just a preliminary draft. It's not even, I call it permitting, but it's also, some of these aren't permits, they're just reviewing things like easements, or a lot of the town departments will have a fire department do safety review and things like that. So it's really just a preliminary list, all like I said, the permits and then some of these reviews, and the agencies we would have to go to, what permit we have to submit. Very preliminary dates.
I think what we want to do is if we're gonna have a list like this, we need to split it between the two, collection and treatment. Just because there are some that are gonna overlap and some are gonna be very different.
Is there another one of these? I didn't get one of those sheets.
I think we could add a column to the right to just identify which one, is a collection or is a treatment. And then some of the stuff on the list, obviously, they did not necessarily permits, but more like coordination of some sort. But we could refine that a little bit better.
Why wouldn't you add this right to the schedule?
Hmm,
Yeah, we put some schedule.
yeah,
A lot of these are approved, I mean, we have the SRF permits starting,
Yes,
but
but it-
Right.
you can't do a lot of these permits until you have the plans that you actually submit, but our whole intention was finalizing the list first, seeing where.
what you need, when,
Yeah, what has
From
been
whom?
outreach with these communities before? I know like Jeff mentioned, you're already talking at Seashore, but following up with them. So kind of what have we said to them so far, and then getting them involved pretty much right away and starting the discussions. I mean, the MEPA certificate list, a lot of the kind of we need to have as well.
And the superintendent just mentioned to me in a meeting how much she appreciated the reach out that we had done through you with, and they're very excited about connecting. They definitely want the visitor center connected, which is, I know,
Yeah,
fabulous.
yeah, they definitely want to get out of the wastewater business.
They do.
yeah, that's not exactly.
And I think that's actually gonna have a huge impact on
Huge.
Salt Pond.
It's probably all of our mitigation.
Yeah,
Yeah, I would definitely put this, sort of like integrated, right? So,
And when is our next CPC meeting? Let's set that up so that everybody's.
the second
We're gonna
second
go back to the
Tuesday is
second.
the. 13th?
13th.
Because all those permitting things, you're dealing with governmental or quasi-governmental bodies and they have a timeline process. This first schedule is kind of private, like a private sector schedule. The other one is a public sector schedule, and they don't operate the same. It's
Exactly.
like their sense of urgency and,
I might not be able to do the 13th,
Oh, okay.
only because I have to drive to Syracuse so.
You said it all in one day?
Well,
We did
if
that
I
from
left
here
here
once.
at 5, I'd probably be getting there.
Syracuse
like
from here once. That was a
midnight.
long
Wanna
way.
do it, you could do it virtually, Jeff.
Now
Now that they've met you and know you, you can do virtual.
yeah, but I'd probably be driving, so I guess.
Oh, okay.
I guess
That's
that
what
was my.
Hillary's doing
I
right
guess-
now.
I guess- I guess that was my concern unless it was earlier, but,
Could we do earlier?
I can do, yeah, I'm okay with that.
Fred, could you do earlier?
Wait,
On the
on the
13th.
13th?
Yeah,
is it something that we could do at like 10 to 12? Is that possible, or is that too early? Or like, even if it was like 1 to 3, then at least if I'm leaving at
I
3,
think 1
then.
to 3 is doable,
Yeah,
and 10 to 12, I have another projects meeting.
Then at least I'll get to 6 hours, so it'll be, so. Yeah,
All
so
right,
I get
let's-
there at least I get there like 9 or 10. So
Let's
it'd be better than
change our
getting there.
time to 1. It's 12.
I apologize.
you're taking someone to Syracuse?
Well, I have a project,
Oh.
not a project meeting, I have
Is
corporate
12:30
meeting.
better?
I have a corporate meeting on Wednesday, so I have to.
Jackie,
Of
you're
our
here on
office.
Tuesdays anyway. Oh, you're-
Yeah. I can move around.
All right, let's do 1 to 3 then,
Okay.
on the
13th.
13th.
That's on
Um,
August 13th?
Yeah, is
Right.
that okay?
Yeah, that's fine. That's great.
And then, if you can just, when you get the agenda ready, if you can email that out, and then could you send the, like when you guys set it
The
up, can
link?
you set up a link and send it
Yeah.
to make sure that Lauren and I get that so that
Not running around with the lights.
no, that would be, I appreciate everyone's flexibility though. So,
I just, I don't wanna change our date. I'd rather change the time than the date, because when we get screwed up when we change the date. The more we can stick to our regular
Schedule.
schedule, the better.
Fine with me.
Becky, is it possible to project when the estimates will be done at each design phase at this point? So that we will know which meetings that the estimates will be done at,
Which estimate?
all of them.
Oh, you mean like the?
Any
of the cost estimates.
Yeah.
Oh, cost estimates.
Can you put those in the schedule also?
Yep.
All right. Thank you very much.
Cool.